You've probably heard about Trump's one big beautiful bill. You've probably heard that it slashed rights, gutted oversight, and shifted massive power to the executive branch. But there's one part almost no one is talking about, and it might be the most dangerous piece of all. ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The agency is quietly being transformed into something else. Not just a deportation force, not just border enforcement, but a personal police force, loyal not to the law, but to the man in power. This video isn't about immigration policy, it's about authoritarianism and how every strongman needs enforcers. So, while we're busy watching Congress and courts, Trump is building his own internal army. And he's already funded it, trained it, and legally unleashed it. So let me show you what's happening, because by the time people realize what ICE has become, it might be too late. So when ICE was created in 2003, it wasn't pitched as a political weapon. It was part of a post 9/11 restructuring of national security, born under the newly formed Department of Homeland Security. Its original purpose? To handle customs violations, prevent cross border threats, and enforce immigration law, mostly focused on things like counterfeit goods, human trafficking, and detaining undocumented immigrants at the border. That's what they told the public. But even from its inception, ICE had troubling design features. It wasn't just another agency, it was built to operate with minimal oversight. Combined elements of intelligence, policing, and surveillance, and it was granted tools that even local law enforcement did not have. And its budget, well, it ballooned. In 2003, ICE had around 3 billion in funding. Today, it's over 9 billion, and with 170 billion hidden in Trump's new bill. Yeah. Why? Because Trump doesn't just want ICE to enforce immigration laws. He wants ICE to be his hands, his boots, and his purge. Under Trump's first term, we saw what ICE looked like when it was unchained. Families torn apart at the border, children in cages, raids at schools, homes, churches, US citizens detained by mistake. This wasn't law enforcement. This was political theater designed to intimidate, isolate, and punish. But even then, ICE still had legal limits. It still had to answer to courts. It still had to follow due process. Now, those limits are disappearing. Trump isn't just expanding ICE power. He's rewriting the rules. So ICE answers only to him. And that's not immigration policy. That's regime architecture. Every authoritarian regime has one thing in common. And I'm not talking about just propaganda, not censorship, but a loyal internal police force. One that doesn't just enforce laws, but enforces loyalty. Because a dictatorship without enforcers, that's just a man with a microphone. Let's look at the pattern. Nazi Germany had the SS, a force personally loyal to Hitler, empowered to arrest, torture, and kill without any kind of oversight. Chile and under Pinochet had DINA, a secret police that disappeared thousands under the guise of national security. Russia under Putin built the Rosgvardia, an armed internal force designed specifically to crush protests, intimidate, and protect the regime, not the public. These aren't traditional militaries. They were internal weapons, handpicked, ideologically loyal, unaccountable. And in America, Trump has found his version. It's ICE. ICE has been slowly shifting toward this model for years. But under Trump, now under one big beautiful bill, that shift is accelerated. This isn't some wild prediction. We're already seeing the warning signs. ICE now conducts mass raids not just at borders, but in cities and workplaces. They've detained US citizens without warrants or any kind of due process. They use private contractors and unregulated detention centers far from public view. And they've quietly expanded surveillance, including access to facial recognition, databases, license plates tracking, and geolocation data. But why ICE? Because it's a civilian agency that isn't subject to the same constraints as the military. And under the new legal framework, Trump is building ICE. It doesn't have to answer to courts, state governments, or even Congress. It answers to the executive, and the executive alone. So let me be clear, ICE is being molded into an internal enforcer, not to protect you, not to keep borders secure, but to carry out the will of the regime, whatever that may be. And if you think it'll stop with immigrants, then you haven't studied history. You've probably heard that Trump's one big beautiful bill was about cutting Medicaid and fast-tracking deportations. But that's just the surface. What this bill really does is quietly legalize authoritarian power through structural shifts most people didn't even notice. So let's talk about what's buried in the fine print. Massive funding increases for ICE, billions more in discretionary funding, expanded authority to build or lease detention centers without any kind of public input, loopholes to bypass federal hiring limits, letting ICE flood its ranks with fast-tracked agents, and zero accountability structures. This isn't immigration reform. This is a militarization. ICE isn't getting money to process visas faster. It's getting money to raid homes faster. Court power gutted. The bill undercuts federal courts' ability to issue nationwide injunctions, which were the only legal tool stopping mass deportations and family separations during Trump's first term. It centralizes immigration court authority under executive appointed judges, many with zero judicial experience and openly partisan records. It allows the Department of Homeland Security to bypass judicial review entirely in national emergency cases, which Trump can now declare unilaterally. So what does all of this mean? It means ICE can detain someone without oversight, and that person may never see a judge or even a lawyer, ever. States no longer matter. The bill allows federal immigration enforcement to override state protections, including sanctuary policies. It gives ICE the power to federalize local law enforcement during deportation operations. In other words, If your city council voted to protect undocumented residents, ICE can still show up with trucks and raid your neighborhood. Let's be real. Trump isn't building policy. He's building a machine that does exactly what he wants, when he wants it, with no checks and no consequences. And ICE is the engine. This bill is not just dangerous because of what it says. It's dangerous because of what it unlocks. The legal power to turn a federal agency into a personal security force, to detain without reason, to silence dissent, to raise due process under the banner of immigration enforcement. This is how authoritarianism happens, not without a bang, but with a budget. If you think this is just about money or laws, you're missing the most important piece: loyalty. Because authoritarianism doesn't just need power, it needs people willing to carry it out, no matter what. And Trump has always understood that. Inside ICE, loyalty is the new qualification. During his first term, Trump purged ICE leadership and appointed hardliners who aligned more with his ideology than with constitutional norms. Internal memos showed that whistleblowers, including agents who spoke out about family separations or abuse in detention centers, were harassed, transferred, or forced out. Meanwhile, ICE promoted those who carried out the most aggressive tactics, the loyalty tests. You didn't rise in ranks because you followed the law. You rose because you followed the leader. This is exactly how regimes consolidate internal power. You eliminate dissent, you reward enforcers, you build a culture of fear and obedience inside your force, so they never question orders, even when those orders cross legal or moral lines. And that's what ICE is becoming: ideological training and militarized culture. ICE recruitment materials increasingly focus on toughness, battle readiness, and order, not community safety or justice. Tactical units are trained more like military SWAT teams than civil enforcement. Internal morale programs emphasize patriotism and defending the homeland, coded language for unquestioning nationalism. ICE has been caught monitoring political activists, complying watch lists, and working with private security firms to spy on journalists and legal advocates. This is not immigration enforcement. It's the blueprint for a domestic suppression unit. And let's be honest, ICE isn't being built to serve the American people. It's being built to serve one person. And under the new legal structure, if that person tells ICE to raid crime-infested cities, round up protesters labeled as domestic threats, investigate journalists or political opponents, there is no mechanism left to stop it, because the people inside ICE aren't being trained to ask questions. They're being trained to follow orders. Now, here's the part people tend to miss. This isn't just about immigrants. This isn't about illegal crossings or securing the border. This is about control, and control only. Because once a government builds a loyal police force, once it removes judicial oversight, floods it with funding, and stacks it with enforcers who answer to power, not law. That force doesn't stay in one lane. ICE has already detained US citizens, including kids, and held them for weeks without access to lawyers, carried out street raids in cities far, far from any border, sent agents into courthouses, hospitals, schools, and churches, partnered with private prisons that operate outside public transparency, used tech like facial recognition, cell phone tracking, and license plate scanning with almost no regulation at all. This is what happens before a regime tightens its grip, before it decides dissent is threatening, before it starts calling protests terrorism, before it gives ICE the green light to act, not just as border control, but as a political weapon. Because here's what you need to understand. The next time ICE shows up at someone's door, it might not be about immigration. It might be about association, a Facebook post, a protest you attended, a journalist you supported, cause you donated to, a flag you flew. And when that day comes, the system that's supposed to protect your rights, it's already been dismantled quietly, efficiently, legally. So no, this isn't just another political bill. This isn't just another agency. This is a blueprint. And if we don't call it out now, if we don't demand transparency, accountability, and limits, then we are watching in real time the construction of domestic police state funded by your tax dollars, disguised as immigration enforcement, built to protect one man and not the people. If you made it this far in my video, you already understand. This isn't just about policy. It's about power and what happens when we stop paying attention to how it's being used. Because ICE is no longer just an agency. It's becoming infrastructure for authoritarian control. And the worst part, most people still think this is just about the border. So, here's what you can do right now. Speak up. Share this video. Talk about what ICE is becoming. Don't let silence normalize it. Pressure lawmakers to investigate and defund unchecked expansions of ICE and DHS authority. Support organizations defending immigrant rights, civil liberties, and due process. They are on the front lines. Vote locally. Governors, mayors can fight back or enable federal overreach. Don't sleep on local power. The systems being built today won't just be used on them. They'll be used on all of us. Because authoritarianism never knocks, it kicks the door. And ICE is already holding the battering ram. Don't wait until it's your door. Okay?